What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to talk about three big catalysts for the markets. Number one, we have CPI coming out for tomorrow. Number two, we have Jerome Powell giving another testimony. And number three, we have Donald Trump possibly making some massive announcements involving tariffs that could shake the way the market's going to be moving. So I'll break down everything in a very simple manner in the next couple of minutes and how this could affect SPY, Nvidia, Tesla, SoFi, and a bunch of different tickers. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. Deposit $100 and you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. Deposits $2,000 and you're guaranteed 30, and the offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with this market. So, as far as the market is going, here's what happened. We had Jerome Powell giving a testimony in front of the Senate today. So, today, Jerome Powell was speaking in front of the Senate. Okay, and what he said was he was going to be avoiding politics and talking about tariffs. John Kennedy started to question him, and Jerome Powell continued to insinuate that there's going to be likely a soft landing. The Fed is doing a good job at keeping inflation moderate. And then he also mentioned the fact that the Fed has been doing a good job and that we're not in a recession. As soon as he said that, the market pushed. The market liked what Jerome Powell said, and he caused the market to pump even more. So that's why the market started pushing a bit. As time went on, he was questioned about, the banks and things like that. Yes, the market started to chop around, but then at the end of the day, we got a decent close on SPY. So the question is, will we push even more? What's going to happen moving forward? We're going to talk about these very, very big catalysts. So for now, SPY is trying to push towards this trend line of resistance. After CPI comes out, if we get a good CPI, and as long as there's no bad news, we could be going for 608 to 610 again and try to break all-time highs. If we reject and we don't get a good CPI, we have a gap to fill down here around 600. And if that fails us, I think we easily start dumping down to about 595, very close to our 200 EMA. So it could go either way, but I'll break down something else. We also have Donald Trump as a catalyst. I'll talk more about him in just a couple of minutes. So let's talk about this. Very mixed day. Some tickers were in the red like Nvidia. Some were in the green like Apple. Some ETFs were green like SPY. Some were in the red like the QQQ. Very, very mixed day, and most stocks were kind of flat as the market was not seeing very, very big signs of volatility. It was very flat for the most part, and that's why we saw a big shift here and there. Now, for tomorrow, things are going to be very complicated. I'm going to make them very, very simple to understand, however. So tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 hour before the stock market opens, we have CPI data coming out. Okay, and we're basically expecting everything to be almost the same as before. And let me elaborate on that. So for core CPI month over month, we're expecting 0.3%, a slight increase by 0.1% compared to before. For core CPI year over year, we're expecting 3.1%. That's a tiny bit of a drop by 0.1% compared to before. On inflation for month over month, we're expecting 0.3 to 0.2%, a slight, teeny, tiny little decrease. And then for year over year, we're expecting the same number at 2.9%. This is what the chart looks like. So if you look at CPI, you guys can notice that all items without food and energy are actually going down just a little bit. This is a good sign. However, for all items in total, all item CPI is going up. This has been on a bit of an uptrend for the last couple of months. Not the best of news, at least thus far, and makes things a bit more complicated. So Jerome Powell was asked by a lot of these politicians, what about when the tariffs come out? How is this going to be affecting things? And they did bring up how certain studies did show us that certain prices did go up during the 2018 period when Trump did increase tariffs. However, Jerome Powell said that there were other factors that affected that, and he didn't really want to comment on that. So just keep that in mind. So we'll see what happens, especially with tariffs being imposed. If more of them are imposed, we'll see how that affects CPI. But so far, all items have been on a bit of an uptrend for the last couple of months. And then looking at some data, you guys will notice that crude futures tends to be a leading indicator for CPI. So when crude starts going up, we tend to see CPI follow. When it comes down, they tend to be very, very correlated. So notice that if we go to for example, December/October and November, the whole ending of 2024 had very, very flat crude numbers. It's no surprise that all items CPI was about the same and actually going up a little bit. And then as time went on, we actually saw a slight increase in crude. So crude futures prices went up just a tiny bit, a teeny tiny bit for the month of January. That's not the best of signs. It doesn't guarantee anything. It does suggest the possibility that maybe inflation is going to be about the same, if not a little bit hotter, but we'll see just to be safe. It's not going to guarantee anything for now. It does suggest the possibility that CPI is going to be very close to before, though. That's what I think that suggests. So we'll see about that. We'll see what CPI ends up causing. It's going to likely be very close to before, in my opinion. So that's the first factor. The first factor is CPI data comes out in the morning. Second factor is going to be Jerome Powell. So the big guy is going to be giving a testimony. Today, he didn't really say much. He did not want to say much. He's very careful with his words and he's trying to avoid a lot of questions. So today, he spoke in front of the Senate. Tomorrow, he's going to be testifying in front of the House of Representatives. So he's going to give a speech again. Typically, like the second day is not as crazy. So I don't really expect him to say too much. He will be asked a lot of questions. So I think it's worth listening to, but hopefully he doesn't say anything too crazy. So it might not be too big of a catalyst. And he may continue to push the soft landing narrative that could help the markets. So as of right now, the market's a tiny bit more bullish to Jerome Powell being dovish. It's a little bit more bullish so far. So we'll see if that ends up continuing. All right, so that's the second factor. Those are the two big catalysts for tomorrow, at least on the economic calendar. CPI, then Jerome Powell's testimony. CPI is going to be the bigger factor, at least in the morning. Then we'll see what Jerome Powell causes. So far, markets have favored upside a bit more. But there is one more unknown catalyst, and that's going to be what Donald Trump ends up saying. So what is this one? Let's go over this. The White House announced 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Our top steel importers are Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. Okay, so prices, at least in that sector, will be disrupted, especially as we start to see companies being incentivized to source more locally. But when saying that, yesterday, Donald Trump also announced that he's going to be saying that there's going to be more reciprocal tariffs to be announced on Tuesday or Wednesday on different countries that place tariffs on the US goods. Trump said that if they're charging us 130% and we're charging them nothing, it's not going to stay that way. So Donald Trump has a different view. So he said that either today or tomorrow, he will most likely be announcing more tariffs. So far today, I haven't heard from him. I haven't heard him say it yet. So there's a possibility that tomorrow he might make the announcement, guys. Okay, so you want to be very careful. If you're trading options, if you're playing short term trades, the second this guy opens his mouth, the whole market could completely shift directions. So you have to be very, very careful. I'm not saying he will do it. We don't know for sure. That's the big unknown catalyst we're still waiting for. Once he says it, I think that the market's going to be looking for a very, very big move, possibly to the downside, but it depends. It really depends on what he ends up saying and the extent of these tariffs. So please remember this unknown catalyst that's going to be sitting there. If the market suddenly makes a massive move out of nowhere, it might be because he's speaking about this. So I want to warn you guys about that. He's likely not going to announce this in the morning. Typically, when he announces tariffs, it's closer to the end of the day. So, like 2 weeks ago, when he did it on Mexico, Canada, and China, was towards like a couple of hours into the trading day. And then the last time he made this announcement was on Friday that he was going to make an announcement this week. He did that at the very end of the day. So, my point is, it's very likely it's not going to be at market open, maybe a couple of hours into the day. That's when he might be making the announcements. And if he does do it, expect some high volatility. It's an unknown catalyst, so we'll see how that ends up going. One more thing, we had some earnings that came out. We had Supermicro and Upstart. Both of them are in the green. Supermicro had good earnings overall. We're looking for their sales to be relatively strong. They announced that their EPS was at 58 to 60 cents a share. That is technically very close to expectations. And their revenues at 5.6 to 5.7 billion, a little bit below expectations. Despite that, they had very, very strong guidance between $5 billion and $6 billion in sales for the current quarter. That is above expectations. But they also mentioned, and this is the good part, that for 2025, the revenue could range between $23.5 billion and $25 billion, paving the way for $40 billion in revenue for 2026. By saying that, investors got excited because the investors were expecting $29 billion in 2026. They're saying $40 billion. So that's a big difference. That's very bullish, and that's why the share price is up. For UPST or Upstart, we saw the share price explode because of the fact that they had good guidance as well. They beat on their EPS and revenue. Revenue is up to about $219 million above previous expectations, and their guidance for the fiscal 2025 is quite good. So good guidance overall, good growth, great job by these companies. With that being said, let's talk about the charts. So Honestly, guys, there's a lot of catalysts. Jerome Powell shouldn't be a big one. Hopefully, he doesn't say much. The two bigger ones are going to be CPI and possibly Donald Trump if he does announce something, which I don't know exactly when he's going to make the announcements for these tariffs. For now, if SPY breaks resistance right here, if we break through this trend line, we're going back up to 608 to 610 near the all-time high. And if we break past 610, we're going to be pushing for like 615 or above. Okay, so we're going to be visiting all-time highs if we're bullish after CPI comes out. If we're bearish and we reject off this trend line, watch that 602.5-ish area. If we lose this 602 area, we could easily revisit 600 and then eventually closer to 595 if that fails us. So will we dump all the way down to 600 and 595, or do we break out past 606 to push up for 610? It could go either way depending on CPI. From a technical standpoint, we had a low here, we came up, made a higher low, came up, made a higher low. And because of Jerome Powell, the market's pushed. So Jerome Powell could be a bullish factor alongside CPI. We do favor upside a little bit more on the chart. Now, whether or not this happens depends on some factors, but just keep this in mind. Even if we do get some kind of push like this, that's awesome. I wouldn't be too comfortable though, because if Donald Trump comes out with those tariffs, we could always make a move back down to fill this gap here, because every time SPY is hitting 608 to 610, we reject. So there's a possibility we get a temporary move down from the tariffs if Trump announces them before making another attempt back up like this. So it could be a very, very wild market. You guys can see how crazy this is. A push from CPI, rug pull from Trump's tariffs, and then another recovery move. It could be very wild. So that's what I'm kind of like anticipating, but we'll see just to be safe. So I'm not a genie. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what CPI is going to look like. I can't make promises. The chart does look a bit more bullish for now, but be careful with Trump's tariffs possibly being announced. For the QQQ, we look bullish. We're making a nice uptrend right now because we had this low here. We bounced out of this, made a higher low, and we're continuing to hold up very nicely. We could even draw out a trend line like this as we're forming like a channel. So it looks bullish. If we get a good CPI reaction, you want to see us push to basically 530. If that breaks, we're going up to this 533 to 535 area potentially for another attempt to push. You could also argue that we have a possible like inverse head and shoulders like pattern on the QQQ, which could be launching us up towards all-time highs. That's the bullish case. Break and hold above 530. We're going to be launching towards 535. If CPI is hot and we get a rug pull, even after Jerome Powell's testimony, we're looking for a move back down to 525. If that does not hold us, we could be dumping back down towards like 518. Now, both of these are very possible, but the chart does favor the upwards direction a little bit more. And even if we do get that upwards direction, we push towards like the 533, 535 area, I still am not going to turn into a perma bull because there's always the possibility that we push. And if Donald Trump makes that announcement, I don't know when he's going to do it. He did say he's going to do it either on Tuesday or Wednesday. Tomorrow is Wednesday. It's the last day. So we'll see if he makes the announcement on these tariffs and if that causes a move back down. We'll have to see about that, guys. So keep that in mind. For now, we do look a bit more bullish, but keep these catalysts in mind. For the Russell 2000, we're in the middle. We're looking so-so. There's a gap up here. We dipped a little bit despite the fact that the market held up. So this is looking a little bit weaker. There's a good chance it tries to push up for this resistance at 226 as long as we don't lose 225. If we lose 225, we're looking for an attempt to get back down to like this imbalance over here and the 223s. And if that fails us, we could be dipping even lower towards these imbalances. So it could go either way, but overall, I think that this is favoring that I want us to see a temporary move up, back up to about 226.6. So we'll see about that. Just to be safe, might make a temporary move up, maybe because of CPI or Powell, and then we'll see if we get a rug pull after that or not. I'll be waiting for that. On ES, we're in the middle right now. So check out ES, guys. This is very interesting. Remember the trend I was telling you guys about how we have these like channels on ES? Notice that ES was doing this. We were in this channel going back and forth. Then we broke out to the higher leg up. So this is the first leg up. Now we're doing the same thing, right? We're in a channel. Are we about to see the next leg up like this after CPI comes out? Or are we about to get a rejection? Are we about to push up here and then come right back down? One more time before we get the next leg up, right? It could be either one of those. I don't really like to speculate. I'd rather just be very, very patient. But here's how you're going to determine if we're about to get a next leg up or not. It's to simply just watch the price action. If we get a good CPI and we pump thanks to Jerome Powell's testimony and that, we're looking for an attempt to get up to 61.25. If we break that, 61.60 is coming. So break this resistance, break out of this yellow trend line and try to get up to these highs. If we break past these highs, we're very bullish. We're looking for a breakout. If CPI is hot and it's not too good and we get a rejection here, you want to see us lose 60.50. If that fails us, we're going to likely revisit this low here around the low 6,000s. Could go either way. Even if we get a pump or dump it, it's in the middle right now. It's completely indecisive. So we have to wait and see. But even if we do get the pump scenario, there's no guarantee we pump forever. It could just be a temporary push because Trump's tariffs could also make things complicated. So it's a very tricky market with all these catalysts. So we'll just have to wait and see what ends up happening with CPI, at least for now. So we'll take it one step at a time. On NQ, the same thing is going on. We love to reject off 22,000, but we're trying to break past this trend line right now, which is a pretty good sign. I could even try to redraw it like this so to make this a little bit more clear. But if anything, we're watching to see how it's going to react right here. Same thing as ES. If we break 22,000, we're bullish. We're looking for a new high. The previous highs are going to be tested again if we end up breaking 22,000. If we can't break them, we reject off the trend line. Look at 21,578. If that fails us, we dip back down. Even if we do push higher, we'll see what happens with Trump's tariffs. That's going to be another catalyst, so just keep that in mind. I don't know for sure if he's going to even announce them. He said he's going to do it on Tuesday or Wednesday, but we'll see just to be safe. For Bitcoin, looking a little bit in the middle, it loves to bounce off the 95,000-ish area, and it loves to reject off 98,000. That's our range for now, so I do anticipate a little bit of a push tomorrow, right, like this, and we'll see if you reject here, just continue to push. But we're looking for a push back up to about the 97 to 98,000 area before it dips back down. On Nvidia, we're completely indecisive, waiting for CPI and the tariff announcements. This was trying to push only to consolidate. It was very choppy today. If we break 135 and hold above it, we're going to be in the potential to run past 140. And if we end up rejecting, we're looking for a move back down to 128. If that fails us, we're dipping to 125 or below. Could go either way. Honestly, it's completely indecisive. It's hard for me to give you guys direction. Look at the last 2 days. It's just going back and forth like this. We have to wait and see with all this data coming out in these catalysts. Because we have all these catalysts with CPI and Trump, it's completely indecisive. It's waiting for its big move. On the other hand, Tesla's bearish because BYD has been partnering with an AI company to develop FSD, or their own version of a driving assist technology. Also, BYD sales are decent, at least that's what it's being reported, but Tesla sales are down in China specifically. So because of that, Tesla's getting compared to BYD right now. There's a lot of fear right now about their sales declining and a lot of negative headlines about Elon Musk's politics. Tesla also got a slight downgrade from Stifel. So all this bad news is coming out for Tesla. We could be dipping to fill the gap around 322. And then if that doesn't hold us at 320, I think we could be dipping to 311 and then 300 flat near the 200 EMA. It's still looking bearish. It loves to pop in the mornings and start dipping, so it might do the same thing over and over again. And there's going to be a risk of us dipping even more. So please keep that in mind if things like that continue. So watch things very, very closely, and we'll see how things end up going from here. But just know that Tesla looks bearish. There's no sign of a bounce yet. So it's getting a very dramatic sell-off, and it could be continuing to fall. It's not the end of the world. It's just another really good buying opportunity that's going to be presented to us. And I'm very excited for what the future holds nonetheless, despite the short-term downside. For Apple, we're in the middle right now. We're stuck between supply and demand. Looking at the 4-hour time frame, if we break 235, we're bullish. Going to be looking for us to get closer to 240. If we reject and we end up losing support at 225, we're looking for a dump. This is looking like it's trying to form a double bottom and trying to break out here. So it does technically look a little bit more bullish. But like I said before, it depends on CPI and the tariff news. Even though it looks a bit more bullish, we'll have to wait and see. For Netflix, we're looking a little bit weaker, at least technically speaking. And by the way, guys, I'm going to be kind of quick with the rest of these. I think I'm 19 minutes into the video right now, so I want to be kind of quick. So if we break 1,010, we could bounce. This is looking a little weaker. It depends on CPI, of course, but this technically is looking like it might be retesting 1,000 or below, or even dip to about 988 before it tries to bounce for a temporary pullback. For MSTR, we're on a bit of a downtrend. We'll have to see if we break past 324. If not, we could continue to downtrend. So it's technically a bit more bearish. We'll see if CPI causes a bounce before it starts to dip, so keep that in mind. For Celsius, it's trying to rebound. It's doing a good job at forming an accumulation. Might try to retest 22.38 for tomorrow for a small dip, a small bounce, excuse me, as the most likely possibility. So give it some time. Supermicro will gap up tomorrow. It's up quite nicely, but then we'll see how it's affected by all this news involving tariffs and CPI. So look for it to open in the 40s. Then we'll see if it slows down a little bit, but it's once again doing a good job. For Palantir, slowed down a bit. It might be retesting 109 before it tries to bounce. Depends on our different catalysts. Rivian, it's going to retest the lower 12s. So if it does not hold 12.5, we could be dipping to 12 flat. SoFi is technically forming a wedge right now. Not looking too good. This wedge may drag it a little bit lower, closer to like the low 14s. We haven't gotten a breakout yet. It's still technically on a slight downtrend. So be careful. The low 14s could be coming. For AMD, it's trying to rebound here. It could be trying to get back up to about 113.5. It might slowly push higher. I'm seeing a double bottom. But like I said before, if 113 breaks, it could try to rebound. If you reject off this, it could be turning back down. So look for a test tomorrow at 113.25, and we'll see if you get a rejection or not. But there's going to be a small push coming for it. ARM is looking a little bit bearish. There's no sign of a bounce yet, and we're still forming this like wedge. So it may continue to downtrend. We lost 158, so it could be dipping to like 156. Give it some time to develop. Coin is at support at 268. It's completely at support right now. We'll have to see if it bounces or not, depending on CPI. On Amazon, it's looking bullish. If you break 233, we're looking for 235. And if you reject here, we're going to be dipping back down to about 228. Technically, it's a little bit more bullish. It looks like it wants to retest 233 than 235, but we'll see depending on CPI and tariffs. Meta, as long as we're above 711, as of right now, we're more bullish. If 711 breaks tomorrow, though, we could be dipping back down to 700. So watch that support. It's at support here. Resistance is a little tougher in the 725 area, but it's in the middle. It is technically a bit more bullish, but we'll see. Microsoft is range bound between 408 and 413. It's going to likely just trade sideways. Look for a push for 413, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. Google's on a bit of a downtrend right here. We have this like double bottom like structure. If we rebound here, we're looking for essentially 189. If we lose support at 185, we could be dipping. We're technically on a downtrend. But I want to see if this could form a base right here. That's all I'm going to be waiting for, at least for now. I'm going to skip over to DJT. It's technically on a bit of a downtrend here. Depending on CPI, it's actually dipping a bit towards like the 29s. The VIX is technically forming an interesting trend here. It's very indecisive. It's waiting for these catalysts. It's waiting for CPI, waiting for Jerome Powell, waiting for Donald Trump. We'll have to see what they end up doing. The 10-year is also waiting for all of this, especially CPI. The dollar is a little bearish, which tends to be bullish for the markets. So we'll see how things go. So in conclusion, the stock market's looking a little bit more bullish, a tiny bit more bullish, technically speaking. We're favoring upside a little bit more as we're making higher lows. But whether or not that happens could be dependent on these catalysts. There's going to be a lot of them, so be very slow and patient with these. We're first going to talk about CPI. That's going to be the first thing to look at. I'll give you guys the reports tomorrow morning. Then we'll talk about what Jerome Powell says. Then we'll see if Donald Trump makes his announcements. This could be closer to like a couple of hours into the day, so get ready. If he makes those tariff announcements, expect a big move, and that could shake things. So you want to be ready for everything. I'm just here to give you guys a preparation. As of right now, the chart's looking bullish. Could they turn bearish later? Yes, it's always a possibility. But right now, we look a bit more bullish, and it looks like it wants to push higher. We'll see how things end up looking with CPI and other things coming out for tomorrow. Thank you all so much for listening, guys. I'll be back with another update tomorrow morning. Until then, have a good day, and peace out.